Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the River Falls Public Library. We're going to start. We've already had a fabulous morning with exhibitor tables for our kickoff of Winter Wellness 2025. Before we get started on our panel, I just wanted to introduce the program that will be happening for the next 3 months at the library. If you've been following us for the last couple of years, this is our third annual Winter Wellness event. Stop into the library anytime to sign up, start registering for a chance to win prizes. You'll find the brochure that lists everything that's going to be happening in the next 3 months, along with our Luminous, once again, Winter Wellness Luminous game board that gives you incentives for coming to the program and challenges you in different ways with different events and activities that you can do on your own. I'm going to introduce you to Michelle Hansen from NAMI, National Association of Mental Illness. We're going to start with our panel discussion, Adults Who Care for Teens and Youth, Empowering Student Well-Being, Insights from the Front Lines of School Mental Health. Michelle is going to direct a variety of questions to all of our panelists today. As we start with each panelist, they will introduce themselves and just a little bit about their credentials and their experience, all that good stuff. And then they'll go into their individual questions, and some of it will be a little back and forth and have some of the other panelists weigh in on those questions. But enjoy the afternoon. Michelle, I'm going to have you take it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Welcome, everybody. We really appreciate you being here today to take part in a really important conversation with some great voices from our area who have some beautiful insights. So really looking forward to this. Like Alice said, we're going to move down the table of our panelists, and we're going to have you introduce yourself, and then I'm going to read the question after you're done with that and let you respond. And again, anybody who has any insights that they want to add, help yourselves. Jump in after they're done.
My name is Sally Piernot. I am prevention specialist with the Hudson School District. I'm a licensed school social worker, and my role focuses primarily on alcohol and drug abuse prevention within our schools, as well as mental health promotion.
Thank you, Sally. Your question is, how do you define youth well-being, and what are some of the early signs of potential issues that parents can watch for?
When I think about youth well-being, I really think about the ability to experience and feel a range of emotions, not avoiding them, and then move through them. All of us, and especially teens and youth, will experience difficult times, whether it's mental health challenges or not. But you think about your teen years, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of heartbreak, there's a lot of trying to find your own identity. And we need our teens to feel those difficult emotions and know that it's okay to have hard times, to sit with that, and then that they will move through that. And so that resilience is what we are looking for, that ability to sit with difficult times, to feel those feelings, and then the confidence that they gain when they kind of move through that other side is that mental strength that we kind of build in our teen years and our adolescence. So that's kind of what I define as our mental well-being, and that's crucial when we are looking at those teen years. That's kind of some of those skills that we really can help our teens build in that time. And so some of the early warning signs that I think are really critical to look for are any extreme changes. Like I said, there is a lot of identity building that happens during this time. And so teens can try on a lot of different kind of personalities in some ways. And so it's not unusual to change, or find different friend groups and things like that. But the really extreme changes can be worrisome when there's a lot of, things that your child may have previously enjoyed, and all of a sudden the abrupt changes. They're no longer doing things that they've previously liked. Their best friendships have suddenly ended, or they're suddenly no longer interested in doing anything. A lot of, difficulty sleeping is always a real red flag, or sleeping all the time. Things like that are real red flags to me when I would be worried about things like depression, anxiety. Communication is always hard in teen years with kids, but making sure that you're looking for lots of opportunities to connect in any way that you can, making sure that you're keeping those lines of communication open is really important to me.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to add? Okay. Great. I did want to mention in the back of the room, we do have some slips for anybody in the audience who would like to ask a question. And if we have time at the end, that we will take those questions and address as many as we can. So they're right out back there, and there's some pens. So, all right. Next, Paris.
Hi, I'm Paris DeLisle. I'm a licensed social worker, and I do mental health therapy within Restorative Services, and I also do therapy at River Falls School District and Ellsworth School District.
Great. Thank you. Your question is, what are some of the biggest challenges you see in your role impacting youth well-being today?
I think there's quite a few issues that I'm kind of seeing, but the main one I think I would see is the isolation and lack of connection among students. I think students are really struggling to find genuine connection within their peers. Some of the main things with that is they are building connections online. However, that is lacking in-person connection and kind of gives them that false sense of reality of connection, because then when they're at school, they're really struggling to talk, build connection, make those genuine peer connections that we have been seeing. And right now that leads to a lot of loneliness, isolation, depression, anxiety about like those in-person interactions. And that is kind of leading to a lot of the depression, suicidality based on lack of friendship, lack of connection. And that is something that is probably the main challenge that I'm seeing currently in my role, is just kids feeling alone and like they don't have anybody. And it's also really having them struggle kind of finding their identity, who are their people, just because they're missing that in-person connection that they used to have. And the online friendships are giving them the kind of that false sense of connection, leading to isolation and loneliness.
Absolutely. Connection is so important. We see a lot of that at NAMI. Does anybody else want to add anything on that?
I would just add to that, also like the lack of being able to do conflict resolution, which is part of that false sense of connection. We see a lot of kids have lots of conflicts online outside of school. And then what happens is then they come back into school and don't deal with that issue like in person. They're lacking that emotional connection to the conflict or the resolution of the conflict. They can't see what they are doing to the other person or vice versa, because they're not having to do that in person. So the lack of emotions are there, and they don't have to like see what it's making that other person feel like. So I feel like that's also a piece of that like lack of social connection, is they're just they're waiting for things. They're not engaging in those things at school when they're with their peers, and instead waiting till they get home and doing those things online.
Thank you.
Yeah, something we're seeing at the high school I work at as well is students are utilizing their phone to resolve conflicts, to make those connections like Carly was saying and like Paris was saying. And that so at the school I work at, we have no phones in the classrooms. And so when the phones are taken away from students, we are seeing a lot of our students struggle, from what the teachers are saying, with having conversation with each other, just even making small talk at the table with each other. Kids are opting to put their heads down, to not have that connection with somebody else, because I think they don't know how to do that. The phone has been used of, look at this TikTok, look at this reel, look at what this person said about you or me or anything. And that's how they're using connection with each other to make friends or to make small talk. When that phone is away, we're starting to realize that maybe we need to start back at the basics and reteach some of our students how to have connection, how to play a game of Uno, how to play Jenga, stuff like that. And how do you have conversations with people when you don't have a piece of technology?
Definitely. Great. Thank you. Taylor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Taylor Stevens. I am the psychology teacher over at River Falls High School. I'm a certified 6 through 12 teacher in social studies and Broadfield social studies. And I'm also a certified national trainer in mental health first aid.
Awesome. My daughter went through your mental health first aid training. It was wonderful. So it seems like such a great resource. Your question is, how are teachers and support staff trained to recognize signs of mental health concerns?
Yeah, so shout out to Geri that you heard from here. Well, and you'll hear from her in a little bit, but she kind of spearheaded the grant that we got in 2023, the St. Croix Valley Vibrant Communities Grant, so that we could get trained in mental health first aid. It is through the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. And so now we have, for the last 2 years, taken this into our schools. So far, we have trained 20% of the Renaissance Academy staff. That is the school that Geri works at. And then we have now trained 20% of the staff at the high school as well. Our next step is to train some of the middle school staff. And then after that, we'll work with the elementary school staff. But if you don't know anything about mental health first aid, it's essentially an 8-hour training that staff go through, and they are taught about what is a mental health challenge, what are the signs of those things, how do we talk to youth about mental health challenges, and how can we recognize some of those signs and symptoms, and part of that being social media. How does social media impact those mental health challenges, and how do we have those conversations with youth about how to use social media appropriately? And then it teaches you how to intervene in a non-crisis or crisis situation to hopefully help either students or staff members or community members. It's really a widespread curriculum to try and understand what is mental health and how do we help people. So just to give you an example of some of the things that are included in that training, some of the crisis situations that we go over include suicide, self-harm, panic attacks, bullying, cyberbullying, trauma, substance use, and developing a mental health challenge. So understanding how do we intervene in these situations. There's an acronym that they use called ALGE. So understanding how do we assess the situation, how can we listen, how can we give resources, and then how can we hopefully help support them in connecting with either a professional adult, if it is maybe a student, or if it's an adult, how can we connect them to some of those resources that might be out there. The last part of that training is self-care. How do you take care of yourself? Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to help in some of those non-crisis and crisis situations. So we are carrying that forward. We still have another training that we're going to be doing with staff this year, and another training that we're going to be doing with students this year. But hopefully the goal within the next year or so is it's going to be a part of the new teacher orientation in the River Falls School District. So then that means every single staff member would be trained in mental health first aid, and they know how to recognize those signs and symptoms and help people in those crisis and non-crisis situations. So that's just one of the few trainings that we are really pushing in terms of mental health first aid and supporting people in understanding mental health and helping in those situations.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Just because I'm really passionate about mental health first aid. So Taylor and I are also going to UWRF, so University of Wisconsin River Falls, and we will be hosting a training for pre-service teachers, pre-service social workers, school social workers, and pre-service school counselors. And we're hosting that at the end of February and early March. It'll be a 2-part series, and training current undergrad and graduate students in mental health first aid so that they can have those skills before they even step foot into a classroom. So we're really excited about that and being able to partner. Oh yeah, and we did a community ed training as well. So a lot of folks came from various backgrounds. So youth leaders, so coaches of various sports in the community, people who work with youth through churches. I think some parents were there. So we're trying to trickle out into the community so it's not just housed in the school, because mental health is is everywhere, and we're seeing people struggle everywhere, not just at school. And so having more partners in the community and different resources for our youth in the community is the most powerful thing we can do right now to push forward.
Thank you. Amanda.
Thank you. My name is Amanda Kauth. I'm an elementary school counselor here in River Falls at Rocky Branch Elementary School. I've been a school counselor in River Falls for 9 years. Prior to that, I was a school counselor at a middle school in Minnesota for 9 years. And so I've got experience developmentally at multiple levels. I also am very active in the Wisconsin School Counselor Association, helping to develop and train current school counselors across the state, and have worked also as an adjunct professor at UW River Falls for the school counseling graduate program.
Thank you. Amanda, how are concerns about a youth's well-being handled and communicated to parents, and how can parents collaborate with schools to best support their child?
I think one of the things to think about is, like Sally had mentioned earlier, we start looking for signs of things that are drastically different than what we've seen in a child previously. So a lot of times information might get shared with the school counselor by a classroom teacher, maybe a support staff at school, that they're noticing some changes in a student. When that happens as a school counselor, or in other realms as well, like as the school psychologist in a building, school social workers as well, we tend to connect with a student, gather a little bit more information, reach out to the parents to just find out what the needs are. We are not a diagnostic entity in the schools. So that's something important to remember, that mental health needs are diagnosed by medical professionals. So we can help make referrals and discover some needs that might be going on. But ultimately, I like to look at this child or youth as a holistic individual across all environments beyond the school as well. I really encourage parents to not be afraid to share with the school their concerns. We will not judge you. That's something I think that's important to remember, that we're there to help look at that child holistically so that they can academically achieve in the school as well. So, an important thing for parents to remember is that school counselors, we have to follow ethical guidelines of confidentiality. So if you share something with us about your child that you have a concern about, barring any safety concerns, all of those pieces of information remain confidential. And so I want you to be able to feel safe sharing information with us in the school. But I really think it's important as well to have that relationship back and forth between home and school so that we can work together as a team. What is it that works best for your child? Parents know their kiddos best, and we want to work together with you. And I think that given different things that are happening for our youth with regard to their mental health, academic challenges then can arise as well. And so our classroom teachers, first and foremost, are there to work on academics. And we want to work together to support the mental health needs, but recognizing that it's a team effort, really.
Great. Can anybody add anything to that?
I will introduce myself more, but I'm Carly Ohman. I am the student support coordinator in the Somerset School District. So this is kind of what I do. I communicate with parents. Obviously our counselors do too. It's depending upon who has the relationship with the family. But the other thing I wanted to bring up, I love everything you said, Amanda, because that is exactly what I would reiterate as well. But I wanted to also bring up that like one of the things that we do in our district too is like work collaboratively on teams of like I work on with the counselors in each building. We have 2 counselors in each of our building, and I work with them and the principals, and we kind of talk about some of these things, and teachers come to us too, like with concerns, and then we kind of talk about that before, and say like, what are we going to do to support this child? Can we do something here in the school before we contact parents? Like, what is going on? We look at that holistic situation. So we do collaborative teams as well.
Great.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up that detail. It's important to remember that at school, we want to be supportive of what you're doing at home as well. And so when we have a conversation about a child, it's not that we're trying to be like restricting information from parents, is that we want to have the best plan laid out forward before we incorporate working with the family plan as well. Yep.
Just as the only teacher on the panel, I wanted to shout out all the counselors and all the professionals that are at this table here too. Teachers, yes, we focus on academics a lot, but we spend sometimes every single day with those kids. And so we can kind of be that first person that says, hey, I'm noticing this thing. I don't know what to do. Can I work with you to try and help them with that? And so it really is a team effort. It's not just the counselors. It's not just the teachers. We are all working together to try and support that individual and that student.
All right, Erin.
Hello, my name is Erin McNiff. I'm a licensed marriage family therapist and I work with St. Croix Valley Restorative Services. I do in-office, like community-based therapy. I also contract with Pierce County Jail and do therapy for inmates and all of their suicide assessments, and then contract with the River Falls High School.
Great. Erin, what would you like parents to know on the issue of youth mental health and well-being, and how can parents model behavior to create positive change?
Well, I like to start off by saying I've also worked in trauma for 22 years, and I think parenting is the hardest thing I've ever done, right? It's essential to understand that mental health is just as important as any other aspect of our health, right? And breathe. I think that often as parents, we forget maybe what it felt like to remember those moments, that our teen stressors, although well, they're just going to school and they work or some relationships, I have to worry about all these other things. Their brains don't have the capacity, or maybe they don't know the skills yet to manage those things. And really what I want to learn or share is to remember to model the behaviors. They learn and they watch constantly. If you have a good communicative relationship and can speak with your child, that's great. But what you're doing, what you're modeling, is really what they're watching. How you speak to your partners and friends, how you talk about your boss, how you come home and take 5 minutes for yourself, your own self-care, your own mindfulness work. That when you are doing well, they will do well, right? And sometimes to be aware that, you know, it's not the absence of struggles. So to keep checking in, don't wait for those moments when they need you. Oh, my teen knows that I'm here for them. We have a good relationship. They'll let me know. Check in, and create like habits that you check in with, nighttime text, things like that, dinner conversations. Be present. Being present and modeling that behavior and teaching resilience is how that they know you're there, right? Listen. What they say is important to them, and that's what matters. I remember listening to hours about video games, and it's definitely not my favorite, but if that's what's important, listening to them, their big issue is big for them, right? But showing empathy and compassion and validating a feeling doesn't mean you agree with how they're managing it. They can be mad, they can be sad, they can be happy, you know, and really encouraging them to identify emotions by doing it yourself. I'm feeling this way, you know, they feel what you're feeling, you know, so demonstrating how, oh man, I'm really stressed today. I'm going to take a break. Just verbalizing that, narrating things like that. Teaching them to problem solve, teaching them to be independent, but know where to search for resources, because it's a lonely life, but we don't have to do it alone, right? So fostering the environment, I think, prioritizing your own mental health, your own self-care, home environment, that it's safe, they have places to rest, and that seeking help, you know, is a strength. I often remember saying, well, if, you know, my parents are tough, I want to be like them. They don't need help. I don't need help. If that's what you're modeling, that's what you're getting, right? So being able to say, it's okay to ask for help. And I just, for I work with a lot of adult males too. So please encourage that for for males to be able to have friendships, to foster, to communicate how they feel about things, because we overlook that a lot and don't provide a lot of space. So I think that would be something to be very mindful of and to remember. Great. There's probably a lot more, but I think.
Thank you. Does anybody else anything to add to that? Okay.
Just a technique if you don't really know where to start. Something that I love to do with my teens is something called rosebud thorn. And it's something super easy. You could do it daily. You could do it once a week. You could do it however often you want. But the thorn is maybe something that's tough, something that's not going super well. You could have them write it down on a piece of paper. You could just have them think about it for a little bit. You could sit down at the dinner table and talk about it. Or even if you wanted to write it down on a sheet of paper and share those sheets of paper with each other. The bud is something that they're maybe working on, or something that maybe they're a little excited about, but they don't know what the next step might be. And then that rose is something good, something positive. If they don't have something for all three of those categories, that's okay. But at least getting them reflecting and getting them thinking, because that's one of the hard parts about the teenage years is they struggle maybe a little bit with that self-reflection and don't always know how to communicate how they're feeling. So something super simple as rosebud thorn, let's talk about what happened today, what's happening this week, and just opening up that door and also sharing your rosebud thorn with them can show them that, yeah, it's okay to talk about those things. It's okay to talk about my feelings, and maybe we can work together on a goal and set something up that's going to support both of us.
I'd like to second the rosebud thorn. We've done that in our home and to great success. You'd be surprised as much as they roll their eyes. They do share.
I just had two quick thoughts to add. And I don't know if any of you were prolific journalers in high school like I was, but if you have forgotten how big those emotions feel, you can just open that journal up and it'll bring you right back. And the embarrassment is just not as deep as you thought you'd suppressed it. So the other thing, like I think an important way to model and to really model some positive behavior change and also to strengthen the relationship is when you are having, like, you mentioned the way you speak about your boss or things like that, or you're having some personal problem in your own life, asking your teen for advice is a really powerful way to both model asking for help and getting insight from your teen, because they do have a lot of these similar issues. The difference between your personal adult relationships and their teen relationships is not as far off as you may think, and that you might get different insights. And so consider asking for advice, and then when you are trying to offer your own advice, they may be more willing to take it. So opening up that two-way relationship is really helpful.
That's a great point. All right, Geri.
Hi, everybody. My name is Geri Muller, and I am a school counselor here in the school district of River Falls. I proudly work at the Renaissance Charter Academy, which is the very small but mighty high school here in the district. I've been in the district for 3 years, and prior to becoming a licensed school counselor, I was a middle school teacher of English for 6 years. And I'm also a certified mental health first aid instructor like Taylor down there. So
Great. Geri, what supports and crisis intervention protocols are available for youth struggling with mental health, and are they enough?
That's a big question. I don't know why I picked that
You got the easy one.
So keep in mind, I work in a school, so it's going to be very school lens focused. But I'm going to start with the crisis intervention protocols that we have here in our district in River Falls. So we have a number, like Taylor mentioned, of trained staff that are able to recognize crisis and maybe crisis or forming crisis situations with any student in our buildings. Students can have something that is maybe they want to keep it private and they pass a note to somebody, and then that note gets intercepted by staff, and then staff need to form their team and assemble and go and help that crisis and intervene. Or it can be something that a student brings to us as a crisis and they can respond to that. So there's lots of different things throughout a school day that our staff can handle and are trained to handle. And that's why Taylor and I are very passionate about sharing the youth mental health first aid as well, because it keeps that training going and it includes and welcomes more staff into that training so that they feel prepared to respond to a crisis or a forming crisis when in the building, because it can be scary because we're humans too who are working with our youth. the training that goes on, especially with youth mental health first aid, includes a lot of de-escalation and trauma-informed practices. And then every school in our district also has what's called a MERT team. So it's a medical emergency response team. And youth who are going through mental health challenges are also included in that. So every school is going to have a team that is already ready to assemble when given the code on the walkie-talkie or the code over the PA or an email that says that the MERT team is needed, so that there are already staff, and it's teachers, counselors, nurses, SROs. There's a variety of people who are ready at any moment to drop what they're doing, have their class covered, have their office covered, whatever, and then go assist the youth that is there. And then other things that are more counselor specific or school social worker specific, we have suicide screeners and self-injury screeners that we do with students who have been brave and vulnerable and come forward and said that they are having suicidal ideation or have self-harmed or self-injured. And so our counselors and school social workers are trained to do that with students and walk through safety planning and making sure that the right people are informed at the end of the day to go forward with safety with that student. Other supports that we have in our buildings, I'm really proud to work in a district that supports mental health. I truly feel like the school district of River Falls has made mental health a priority, which obviously I'm biased, I'm a school counselor, but I think that's amazing. So we have school counselors in every single building. Every single elementary has their own dedicated school counselor. The middle school team, every single grade has a dedicated school counselor. The high school has 4 school counselors. And I have the smallest caseload at the Charter Academy. I have about 65 students, and I am their school counselor. So I get to spend all of my time with just those students. I don't need to split time between buildings. And we also have 2 fabulous school social workers that rotate around the building. They are running every single day. And they are wonderful people and wonderful supports for our students and our families. And then the other thing that we share a lot with our students, especially at the middle and high school level, is more of a national support, but just if you haven't heard of it, it's called the 988 hotline. So you can text or call, no matter what your home language is, you can text or call 24/7, and that connects you with trained mental health crisis support staff that can connect you with resources in your area and help de-escalate what's going on in your life at that moment. Are they enough? No. It's a lot, and I don't think it's enough though. We're seeing mental health crises and non-crises pop up a lot. I mean, every week at school it's a brand new chapter. It's new things coming up, but I think what is good to remember is that there are so many people that want to help and want to be there for students, whether they're trained and have a master's degree or they're just a community member or the janitor or whoever. There's so many people out there who care. They just need to know how to help. And so I think something like having the library focus on wellness and mental wellness especially is so important in our community, because it doesn't just impact our youth. There's adults out there who are really struggling. There's a lot of people who are struggling and just need to know what to do. So I don't think it'll ever be enough, unfortunately, but we can keep trying.
Great. Would anybody else like to tackle that question?
Well, I just want to add on when we say it's not enough. I mean, I agree, and I will even go an extra level higher. Is we have contracted in our Somerset school district with therapists that come into our building to meet with kiddos, like once a week. And still, sometimes we still continue to see mental health struggles with even that extra level of like that medical intervention that we were kind of talking about. So I don't have the answer for it, but I just wanted to say that even with that extra level, sometimes we're still seeing the mental health crisis come to the schools.
To tell you a little bit more about the mental health first aid as well. So Geri and I were trained in 2023 in the youth mental health first aid, meaning it's targeted towards adults. hopefully helping youth and other community members. But this past summer in 2024, we got trained in teen mental health first aid. So then what that means is if there's 20% of the staff in that building certified, which we now have the high school and the Renaissance Academy both certified, we can now train the youth in this training as well. It's a little bit different than the adult training because it's more so about how do you help your friends and how can we connect them to an adult that's going to support them. But we still go over what is suicide, how do we know the signs of suicide, how do you help in substance use crisis, and how do you help your friends with bullying or cyberbullying or trauma. So far we have trained all of the seniors at the Renaissance Charter Academy. We did that at the beginning of the school year. And then we just had about 60 of the seniors at the high school certified as well. And so that is going to continue to grow. We're about to train the HOSA organization, which is the healthcare group over at the high school, and that's going to be another group of students. So again, we're trying to know it's never enough, but we are trying to do things to try and support our youth and increase that awareness of mental health.
The Teen Mental Health First Aid is a great curriculum, and the Hudson School District also does that in the 10th grade health classes. So we have all of our 10th graders trained in that too.
Great. All right, Carly.
So like I said before, I'm Carly Ohman. I work for the Somerset School District. My title is a student support coordinator. However, I am a licensed social worker in the district. I have worked there for 5 years. And previous to that, I have worked in many different capacities. I was in day treatment. I worked as a therapist there. I also worked in the county. And so I have lots of experience.
Great. Carly, how is school-based mental health funded in your district?
So I'm kind of going to give you the overview of like how a lot of positions like mine particularly came to be in the school districts. So there was a grant that came out through the state of Wisconsin, DPI, and they were saying like, hey, we want to help with mental health in the school districts. How can we best do that? And so you could apply for a grant for your district, and the grant had specifications of what you could use that for. I will be honest, at the very beginning, a lot of it was used for hiring coordinators like me that would help kind of get look at the school district as a whole. What could we do to integrate mental health services into the school, mostly through those like getting contracts with other companies to get licensed therapists into the school where they can start seeing children. That's really how it started. And so you didn't have to have any kind of credentialing or background in order to do that. People would come on board. I mean, a lot of people did, but you could come on board and you were helping kind of get those things to the district, help kind of organize that. So I started my own journey. I was in a 3 school consortium, and I would go to those 3 school districts and I'd help get that up and running. Then it was continued to be grant funded for quite some time. So you'd have to apply for the grant. Just as of 2 years ago, it turned into the state saw that it was a need for all school districts. So it became into a per pupil amount that the schools were given to use for mental health resources. And now now we're looking into the future, and they're asking, it used to be a $31 per pupil funding source, and now they're looking into increasing that. Hopefully that's what's out there. But when I say that, I will say that's still not enough. When they're funding somebody like me to help organize those things, then how do we fund other things like bringing big projects into the district? Like we heard, it was a grant funded position. A lot of times we're still looking for grants to bring those mental health services into our district. So I just want everybody to understand that, like, we are looking for things constantly. And, in smaller districts too, the 31 per pupil doesn't go very far. So just remembering that that's something that we're constantly looking for, is the different ways to fund other things, such as like the teen mental health first aid, or I know that me and Sally have partnered with the county a lot on getting different kind of resources for AODA into our district, so that that is an area where we see lack of, support in that area. So that's we are doing those things and looking for those grants always to see how we can best support our districts.
Great. Would anybody else like to address that? I don't think a lot of people know how this comes about, you know?
I'd just like to reiterate that it's super uncertain. So from 2023 to 2025, the state budget, like Carly said, it's $31 per pupil, but that was a one-time funding, and currently it's set to revert to $10 per pupil. The current proposal is to increase for 2025 to 2027, but the budget hasn't been set. So, and if the proposal is approved, it'll increase. If it's not, it'll decrease. And planning for that is really difficult. So we can't really plan for the future when we don't know what we've got. So it's hard to plan for the future of what we're going to do and how to support these kids when we don't know what's coming in.
I see a lot of nodding heads there. It sounds like that's a universal problem. All right, thank you so much. Now we're going to open it up to a few free form questions that are pre-written. And then if we have any of the questions from the audience written down on the slips, we will address those next, time permitting. All right. And panelists, feel free to hop in and share your thoughts on this question. What self-care coping strategies do you see students utilizing to manage their mental health challenges? It sounds like a lot of you were talking about using the cell phones and whatnot. So anything else?
I can just speak to some of my favorites. I think a lot of kids use a lot of creativity. I have one student who I think it's really neat. He's been really clear that he needs to keep his hands busy. And he's discovered that he loves to sew, and he's into fashion design. He creates, or I guess he kind of modifies, like skater type clothing. So he's taken to creating like really cool jeans, and he's selling them to friends and online, and got his own little business. And so it's been really cool to see. And he's really using it to help with his like vaping. So that's been really fascinating and awesome to see.
That's great.
I was going to say, like, negatively, I mean, like, coping, I feel like negatively, I have been seeing people, like, kids wanting to use their phones, the wanting to watch videos, trying to take a mental break. It does distract maybe from what they're thinking, but it also can add. So that's where I know in our middle school particularly, what we're trying to do is we have Kate Rohrbeck. She's a wonderful counselor. She is trained in the neurosequential model. And she is trying to help integrate other ways of coping into our middle school. So we brought rocking chairs into our counseling office because one of the main things for, like kind of regulating yourself is rhythm. And so like rocking can be a rhythm, and trying to teach kids other ways they can get rhythm. Just walking can be rhythmic. So we talked about that and like really getting connected back to your body and grounded. Lots of other things like puzzle games that you can like hold in your hand, like little like mazes and things like that to help kind of, and then doing a lot of cross body work helps with your brain to start using both sides of your brain then when maybe it's stunted at not being able to do that. So we are doing lots of those things, teaching teachers how to incorporate those into their classrooms as well for coping, because, it tends to be the coping skill they want to use is the cell phone. And like I said, it can be, as harmful as it can be helpful, but they don't see the harmful piece of it. They only see the helpful piece of it.
One thing I do like about some of the technology, I have students coming in and say, I saw this on TikTok or something, and I do want them to be a little careful, but that I just thought about how it can help between a parent and a child, like showing, and I have students who are listening to podcasts and their audiobooks on mental health. They're knowledgeable about it. They're coming to me with certain skills and ideas. Which I'm amazed about, and I'm glad that there's more awareness and there's not that stigma, there's not that shame. They're naming it, they're knowing where to look for it or look elsewhere for it. they, I believe, they're talking to friends about it, which is a great coping skill. Journaling. I've seen a lot more students, the creativity, making music, writing poems, selling things that they're doing, a little more building self-esteem type of actions, which is great. So I think I think they're being a lot more creative. But if you or you have a teen, is like, look at the podcast and share them, listen, and then talk about it together, or using some of those skills together. So
I guess my lens is a little bit different in that I work with K through 5. And so I'm thinking about things that are really proactive strategies and working on teaching young children strategies to be able to deal with stress and cope with big feelings. So we proactively teach across all of our elementary buildings in River Falls, the zones of regulation. So if you've heard about red, yellow, blue, or green, you know what I'm talking about. And so thinking about how all of our emotions are okay. What really becomes a concern is our behavior and how we choose to deal with those emotions. And so proactively teaching, and it's something I think it'll come up in one of our other questions too, but that's really important from my lens of talking about breathing strategies, the neuroscience behind what's happening in your brain when you have a strong feeling. I mean, my second graders know about the amygdala in the brain, right? And the feeling center of your brain, and that your thinking brain isn't working when you have a strong feeling. And so I think it's really powerful that we take those moments to proactively teach these strategies. And then for children who maybe aren't maybe grasping those ideas, that we do more intensive work with them, maybe small groups or those kinds of things, communicating with the middle school and high school staff, that these are some children that might need some extra support because the strategies were just not connecting with them.
As a classroom teacher, I deal with all juniors and seniors, so I've got the old kids, but a lot of them use fidgets. So I'm sure you've seen all kinds of different fidgets out there, but one of the most popular ones nowadays is a Nido cube, or like the Nido fidgets, and it's kind of like a stress ball where if you squeeze it, there's a little bit of resistance, but then it'll go back to the shape that it is. And there's like bears, there's diamonds, there's cubes, there's all kinds of different ones, and I would say at least a third of my students in my classroom will bring their own Nido cubes in, and we'll have that even just as they're doing an assignment or talking or listening to lecture or whatever the activity might be. And that's something that they use to regulate however they might be feeling, whether it's stress or emotions. And so those fidgets can be really helpful as well.
I just wanted to be transparent too, working at the high school level, that there are other maladaptive coping skills or self-care strategies that we are seeing a lot. And I'm seeing this ramp up, especially around the holiday season and moving forward. A lot of students do use substances and self-injury as a way to cope with how they're feeling and what they're going through. And so I agree a lot with Amanda too, is like, what are some proactive strategies that we can take? Because we know just telling students to don't do drugs doesn't work. You know, we know that telling them don't cut yourself doesn't just work. There needs to be an open and vulnerable conversation with students about that. And I am not a parent, but I talk with a lot of parents about being okay with having those really hard conversations with students and really listening to what their student is saying, asking why, being curious, why they're using or why they're choosing to harm themselves. What is that replacing for them that maybe they can have a conversation with their students about and move forward from there. I know it's not as easy as that, but yeah, just to bring that other side of self-care and coping strategies can be those more maladaptive ones that we're seeing a lot in our youth, a lot.
Well, and just kind of adding again to that proactive piece, I think modeling in the classrooms is wonderful. So like there can be small strategies that don't even have to be that big, that can be ways of coping. And when I'm saying that, like even a visualization up on their board as kids walk in, like where it's like snowing or whatever you want to do, if it's winter and you want to do summer themes because we're hoping for it, manifesting that, that's just kind of, like something small that a teacher can model of like, this can be a good way. And even using that, like asking some questions, like sit down, look at this, what's going on the board, and just like tell me 5 things think 5 things in your brain of what you're seeing. can be an easy way to just help them ground and regulate coming into a classroom setting. So I think that, and also what I have created in Somerset too is a virtual calming room that is connected to all of our kids' like main classroom page, so they can utilize that at any time. We talk about how you utilize that and why you utilize that with the students, and so that's just, and they can also have it at home because a lot of our students take it their Chromebooks at home. It also has crisis resources on there, so if they are in need of those type of things, that's like a one-stop shop where they can kind of get everything. I also have lots of parent resources on there where parents can go on there and get resources in regards to a variety of different things as well.
Great. We'll have one more question before we address the audience questions. How is technology impacting youth well-being, and how can it be addressed? I know it's kind of been discussed a little bit or a lot, but
well, I think we can just reiterate, like, again, that social disconnected piece. I say biggest thing, like, I really do see is the lack of conflict resolution in our students and our kids. Just because I just think, don't want to be like age myself, but back in the day, right? Like when we'd have to have conversations with people, if we were angry, if we were upset about something that happened, I'd have to go and talk to them in person. I'd have to see them physically react to what I'm saying, and they would get to respond to me, and I get to see what their response elicits from me. I think that piece is really missing in our conversations over our cell phones. Students can go home. I can send off a really nasty message to somebody, and I don't have to think about the repercussions of that message until all of a sudden they might come up. I mean, there probably is going to be repercussions, but they come up, but still I don't have to face that person necessarily. I don't have to see what that is eliciting from that other person. And I feel like that's a really hard thing, is they can't interface with conflict and mediate that. I think that's why we see a lot of friendship issues in kids. And they're not able to navigate through those. I will speak from like a smaller school perspective. I went to school in a really large school where I could make more friends, but when they have their friend groups, it's really hard to leave a friend group and try to find a different friend group, because a lot of them are formed from young ages in elementary school. It's not impossible. I'm not saying that. I just want to say it's harder in a smaller school when you only have limited options for like this class that you've been with for your whole entire school career.
And then in terms of like cyberbullying, one of the challenges kids face is they can't escape it. So bullying at one point, I mean, because phones weren't as much of a thing and social media was not as rampant. I mean, if these kids are dealing with opinions and judgment, they're exposed to it 24/7 and they don't always know how to escape it. So some of the things that we do in like the teen mental health first aid training, or even in my psychology classes, is we do talk about the pros and cons of social media. There are pros to it. You can learn a lot. You can find coping strategies. You can meet people. There's a lot of things that are positive to it, but how do you use social media effectively? So like, how do you follow pages that are going to be beneficial to you? How do you monitor your social media use? How can you set those screen time limits and not be on your phone constantly? So really teaching your kids those skills as well of, yes, social media is not going away. So we need to teach them how to use those things because they are exposed to opinions and judgments and a lot of different things pretty much 24/7.
I think one other thing that we can do as parents is putting boundaries around phone usage and when it is, because I think a large part is kids are not sleeping because they are on video games or their phone at night. So just putting restrictions on when they can use their phone, how often they can use their phone or video games and such like that. And then also doing like a nighttime routine and having technology not being part of that to help them calm down and go to bed at night is going to be a huge thing for mental health, as kids are tired during the school day a lot because they're just not sleeping at night because of video games or being on their phone or TV and that kind of thing.
That's huge, because also sleep deprivation symptoms can mimic anxiety. And so that's you can't differentiate between sleep deprivation and anxiety at times, but also consider that these social media companies are money-making entities, so they are designed to be addictive. Teen brains are not fully formed. They cannot always shut off and identify that they are being addicted. And we all know we also all know about the comparisons on social media and body image issues that come with that. And also, when teens are experiencing depression, depression makes you self-isolate, and phones and the internet and social media also can provide you that temptation to self-isolate more easily and just deepen that depression. Connection is one antidote to isolation, and that you can't get that through a cell phone.
Thank you.
One thing to remember as parents is your young children, they know what's happening around the world because of social media. I didn't know what happened in the next town growing up. Your third graders knowing about war and, all the bad things. And so when I do hear parents, well, my child's too young to discuss X, Y, and Z, please discuss it, because they already know. They're hearing about major traumas that are happening around the world to other friends in different communities, towns, cousins, because they're connected, right? So speak about it, share about it. But we didn't have some of those stressors at such a young age. We didn't know those traumas of the world, and they do already. So, and then remembering that what we feed ourselves, mind, body, and soul. So we said, what accounts are you following? Make things a little happier and follow things that are a little brighter.
Great. Please explain social emotional learning, how and why it's taught, and what kind of impact the learning has on the well-being of children.
Yeah, I find social emotional learning is one of the primary pieces of my work as an elementary school counselor, being proactive in teaching strategies to young children. In kindergarten, even, we start out talking about how to be a learner. How do we sit quietly? How do we take in information? How are we assertive to get the help that we need, whether it's with our academics or any other problem that we might have? We talk about emotions, identifying emotions in ourselves and in others. We talk about solving problems with peers. We talk about all of these different issues. And the whole concept is to be proactive. Before these things start happening, we're going to start addressing these. So we're building skills in young individuals. And like my curriculum and that of school counselors across the country, we are working with K through 12 standards. So we're looking at developing skills in children all the way through their academic career, K through 12. And I guess I can't say enough about that. It really is important. And I see that in my students now that I've been in the school district long enough, that I've worked with kids over the years, that they're able to tell me, hey, Mrs. Kauth, I used this strategy yesterday. And this is the most exciting thing that could possibly happen to an educator, right? But it's so important that I know that kids can use these strategies at school, but they can use them at home too.
Okay. All right. As we are, as we are coming to a close, I think this is a great question to wrap up with. This can be taken by any or all. Counselors and teachers, what do you think is the largest thing community and families can do to help make mental health care a priority?
That's a really good question. It takes a little bit of think time. I really think that given what Erin had said earlier about access to information from around the world, all that we can do to bring positivity, I think, is really important. To focus on things that are going well. Because ultimately, when you think about what that does for yourself as an individual, when you think about positive thoughts, it makes you feel better. When we do things to serve and support others, it makes us feel better. And I think if we can expose youth to those things, they'll have that recognition as well. So even it doesn't take money or funding to do those things. Just bringing positivity to someone else, I think, is a good idea.
I think if we can kind of shift some of our language in our homes, when we talk about health and well-being, we talk about eating healthy foods and exercise and going to the doctor. And if we can also explain how some of those things and some of those same things work for mental health too. Eating healthy foods helps our mental well-being. Getting good sleep helps our mental well-being. Using positive words and having good positive relationships helps our mental well-being. And when we talk about those things around our kids and normalize it, that helps promote our mental well-being. And so it's not talking about it when we have a crisis, but promoting the positive side. And I think helping prepare for when those hard times come, because they do. We all experience hard times, and then we can help talk about those when those hard times come too. So having those conversations early and often, I think, is important. We have checkups all the time, and we can have kind of those mental well-being checkups within our own homes.
Piggybacking off of what Sally said, being vulnerable, it is really hard, but there is a stigma around mental health. And kids are sometimes afraid to talk about how they're feeling because they're afraid of what you will think, whether you're your parent, they're your parent or teacher or coach or whoever it is. I mean, in my own classroom, I tell my kids I go to therapy. I tell them, like, yeah, I had a bad night last night and I'm just not feeling like myself today. So if you could give me some grace, that would be awesome. Yes, these are hard conversations to have, but it shows them that you're human too. And it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to have those bad days, because that's something that is not always appreciated in our society, because there is that stigma around mental health. So being vulnerable and taking those steps to share with your students and your kids and even your community members is an amazing first step.
I tell students this all the time, but I think it bears repeating for adults that want to help as well, is that you are not alone, that there are so many people, and I think I said this before too, that want to help and don't know how. And it's okay. We're not asking people to know all the answers. I'm a school counselor. Kids come to me. I don't have all the answers. I don't know either sometimes, but being able to model, like we've all been saying, it's okay to talk about things. It's okay to lean on your friends, on your partner, on your coworkers. If you can open that up for yourself, that's going to go leaps and bounds with the youth that you are working for as well.
Great. I have another question from the audience. I'm looking for support strategies for young adults who are not in a school setting. I teach high school at a virtual school and I have 2 to 20 something kids who experience anxiety about the future and state of the world.
So they're asking for a resource?
I think they're asking for some advice on how to support these kids as well, even if they're not in the school setting. If you have any ideas, I think there's been a lot of great ideas already, but.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Where to get this space from faith. And then I was just asking, maybe someone selfishly, it's my own kid. Including permission trainings, was exciting this pressure, set young people face to and
Thank you.
Yeah. So I can talk a little bit more about the virtual calming room. I'm willing to share it. It's on our website too in Somerset. You can get to it through the counseling pages there, in any of the schools. And it's underneath my name, Miss Ohman. So what that is like, it's broken up into a bunch of different categories, of different kinds of like copings that people can use. A lot of kids choose to play the games. Like I said, not the best coping strategies. We try to, get them to do there's deep breathing ones on there. There is yoga. There is just movement in general. There's a lot of, puzzle strategies or riddles to try to get them out of that moment, and teaching them how to use that kind of coping. So they're broken in different categories. And then I also have added, like I said, some of those crisis resources so that they can access those if they need them and talk about, this is real. They're broken into different categories, actually, even in crisis. It's, like, what if you have, somebody who is actively suicidal? Here's some resources. There's some because I'm also in the district. I do more than just coordinate our mental health efforts. I also do work with homeless youth and kids who are in foster care. So I think of also basic needs all the time too, because basic needs is one way to help, kids that don't, are not getting basic needs to help with their mental health concerns as well. So there's just all kinds of different resources on there. And that's, like I said, we put that right on our kids. They open up their Chromebooks, they have, it's called ClassLink. It's a little area where they are always accessing all of the things they need for school, and it's there for them to use it all the time. And we do help teachers use those strategies too in the classroom, like the visualizations. Like I said, they can just be up on the board and kind of like teach teachers how to use that when they're coming into the classroom. Or the breathing, there's a breathing ball one that goes in and out. So just having students do that little bit before even testing, for like test anxiety and things like that. So I'm very well, I will be willing to share that information with you and give that to you as well.
Great. Well, as we come to a close, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you to the River Falls Library. This couldn't happen without you. Thank you to Wisconsin Cares. And a quick plug for NAMI. I am the local president and of the affiliate. We serve Pierce and St. Croix counties, and we would love to help support you or anybody that is needing resources, including the homeschooling. So I want to thank our panelists. Thank you so much. Really great conversation.